What if the reason you keep starting over isn't lack of talent, but the fact that you keep talking about the change before the change has a chance to become real? Because there's a specific kind of pain that doesn't get discussed enough. It's the pain of having a serious intention, something you actually want to build, and watching it die slowly, not because the goal was impossible, but because the world got access to it too early. You told someone, you posted it, you hinted at it, you let it become a conversation, and the moment it became a conversation, it stopped being sacred. Suddenly, it had opinions, reactions, expectations, doubt, pressure, questions you didn't ask for, energy you didn't want to manage, and without realizing it, you traded the quiet strength of building for the noisy comfort of being seen trying to build. That trade feels harmless at first. It even feels motivating, but it's a trap. Your brain loves applause because applause feels like progress. A message like, "proud of you," gives you a hit of relief, almost like you already did the work. And then the next morning comes, no cheering, no audience, no dopamine, and the real work asks you to show up anyway. That's where most people lose, not because they're weak, because they trained themselves to associate change with visibility, not repetition. Stoicism has this cold, clean reminder that cuts through the noise. Your life is shaped by what you can control. Your choices, your habits, your discipline, not by the mood of the room. Marcus Aurelius wrote something close to this idea when he warned how easily the mind gets pulled outward, how quickly we start living for other people's attention instead of our own standards. And if you're honest, you already know what that feels like. You sit down to work and your mind drifts to how it will look. You start a routine and immediately wonder if anyone will notice. You make a decision and feel the urge to explain it, to justify it, to make sure nobody misunderstands. Even your silence starts to feel like something you owe an explanation for. But the strongest transformations don't begin with explanation. They begin with protection. There's a season in every real comeback where you need privacy the way a flame needs shelter from wind. Early growth is fragile. Not fragile because you're incapable, but because you're still becoming the person who can hold the new standard without negotiating with yourself. And if you expose that process too soon, you invite the very thing that kills it: performance. You start acting like the goal is already part of your identity, and that identity feeling replaces the hard, boring, invisible repetition that would have made it true, becomes a brand. And then the quiet daily becomes a brand. And then the quiet daily work feels too small compared to the image they just created, so they quit, or they stall, or they keep preparing, while their future stays parked in the same place. So this episode is for the person who's done performing progress, for the person who's tired of announcing, tired of explaining, tired of being inspired in public and inconsistent in private. For the person who wants a different kind of power, self-trust. The kind that comes from keeping promises to yourself when nobody is watching, when nobody is clapping, when the only reward is the quiet fact that you didn't abandon yourself today. If you've been in a season where it looks like nothing is happening, I want you to consider the possibility that something important is happening. You're preparing under the surface. Roots are forming. Standards are shifting. A new identity is being rehearsed privately before it ever tries to stand in public. And that's not stagnation. That's controlled preparation. That's you refusing to let your image grow faster than your substance. If this is the kind of mindset you want more of, calm, practical, and built for real change, subscribe to the channel. And now, let's start with the first truth, the foundation of all of it. Silence is where real self-construction begins. It starts as something small and almost invisible. You stop talking as much. Not because you're trying to appear mysterious, not because you're playing a game, but because you're finally tired of hearing yourself promise things you haven't built yet. You're tired of turning your future into a conversation. You're tired of giving people access to something that's still forming. And that's the moment the real work can finally begin. You catch the patterns that usually hide you. Catch the patterns that usually hide behind noise. The excuses you repeat, the distractions you reach for, the emotional habits that pull you off track. When everything is loud, you can pretend you're progressing just because you feel busy. But when it gets quiet, you're forced to face the only question that matters. Who are you becoming when nobody is impressed? Most people never meet themselves in that way. They stay surrounded by stimulation, by opinions, by constant updates, so they don't have to sit with the uncomfortable gap between who they say they are and what their daily actions prove. Silence removes the stage. It removes the audience. And without the audience, something honest appears. Your standards. That's why the deepest changes often begin during a quiet season where nobody notices. From the outside, it can look like you disappeared. Less posting, less explaining, less reacting. But inside, a different life is being constructed. You're rebuilding your habits, your sleep, your discipline, your boundaries, your relationship with your own mind. And those changes don't announce themselves at first. They don't show up as dramatic results. They show up as smaller victories, like not needing to be seen to stay consistent. Think about any real transformation you've ever respected. The athlete who looks unstoppable on game day didn't become that person in the stadium. They became that person in a room with no cameras, repeating the same movement until it stopped being effort and became identity. The writer who drops a powerful book didn't create it by talking about it daily. They created it by sitting alone with resistance and still writing. Even the calmest person you've met, the one who doesn't get easily shaken, usually earned that calm in private through years of learning how to regulate their own inner weather. Stoicism has always respected this kind of quiet, not as a performance of being unbothered, but as a commitment to mastery. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor, but so much of what made him strong wasn't public authority. It was private discipline. He wrote to himself, not to the world. He didn't need an audience to practice virtue. That's the point. The strongest kind of construction happens when you're no longer trying to prove you're changing. You're just changing. Silence also protects your focus from a specific poison, premature identity. The moment you announce a goal, you can start enjoying the feeling of being that person before you've done the work. You get treated like you're already disciplined, already serious, already committed, so your brain gets a reward early. And early rewards are dangerous because they soften urgency. They make the boring work feel optional. Silence takes away that shortcut. It forces your identity to be earned the slow way, through repetition. And there's another reason silence matters. It gives your new self room to breathe before it's judged. In the early stages, you're inconsistent. You're learning. You're still fragile in the sense that one sarcastic comment can make you question everything. One friend's doubt can infect your confidence. One person's opinion can push you into explaining, proving, defending, until your attention is gone. Silence blocks that. It keeps your energy from leaking into conversations that don't build your future. It keeps your process clean. So the move here isn't to become secretive. The move is to become sacred, to treat your rebuilding like something you don't throw into the open too soon, to let the work mature before it meets the world. Show up on days you didn't want to, on days you didn't want to, on days nobody knew, on days there was no reward except self-respect. That kind of trust is rare, and once you have it, you stop needing noise to feel alive. You stop needing attention to stay committed. You become steady, so let the silence be real. Let it be your training ground. Let it be the place where you build the kind of life that doesn't need constant explanation. And here's a question to sit with before we move on. If nobody could see what you're working on for the next 6 months, what would you finally have the courage to build? Your unfinished self needs protection, not exposure. There's a stage of growth that almost nobody respects because it doesn't look impressive yet. It looks messy. It looks inconsistent. It looks like you're still figuring it out. And that's exactly why it needs protection. New version of you is real enough to feel new version of you is real enough to feel exciting, but not stable enough to survive noise. That's the phase where one comment can get under your skin, where one person's doubt can feel heavier than your own intention, where praise can inflate you too early, and criticism can make you question everything. The goal isn't to hide because you're ashamed. The goal is to shelter what's still forming. Think about it like this. When something is unfinished, it's more sensitive to temperature. A seed doesn't grow better because you keep digging it up to check progress. It grows because it's left alone long enough to do what it's meant to do. A new habit works the same way. If you expose it too soon, you invite interference. People's opinions, their curiosity, their expectations, their jokes, their projections. And even when they mean well, their attention adds weight. Weight you didn't ask for. Weight you can't carry yet. This is why early growth collapses so often. Not because the person wasn't serious, but because the goal became public before it became rooted. Once it's public, you start living with a second job, managing perception. You start thinking about how you look while you're improving, instead of focusing on improving. You start explaining why you're doing it. You start updating people. You start defending yourself when they don't get it. Your mind gets split between the work and the commentary around the work, and commentary is exhausting. The funny thing is, even support can be a trap at this stage. Support can turn into pressure. It can turn into a performance. People ask, "How's it going?" And suddenly you feel like you owe progress. You feel like you owe results. You feel like you owe proof that you weren't just talking. And if you hit a slow week, which is normal, you feel embarrassed. You start avoiding the work because now the work has an audience attached to it. You're no longer building for yourself. You're building for the feeling of not disappointing them. That's how exposure kills the unfinished version of you. It turns growth into a social experience instead of a private commitment. Epictetus had a calm way of saying something like this: "No great thing is created suddenly." That line matters because it removes the fantasy of instant transformation. It reminds you that becoming someone new has stages, and early stages don't need publicity. They need repetition. They need quiet. They need room to be ugly without being judged. Room to be slow without being mocked, room to be inconsistent without being labeled a failure. And the world is not good at giving you that room. The world loves the finished product, the glow-up, the before and after, the comeback story once it's already safe to applaud. But the world has no patience for the in-between. The in-between looks boring. It looks uncertain. It looks like nothing. So if you invite the world in too early, you're asking people to respect something they don't know how to respect, and you end up carrying their impatience on your back. That's why protection isn't weakness, it's strategy. Protection means you choose a small circle, or no circle, for certain goals. It means you stop explaining your focus. It means you let people misunderstand your silence while you keep working. It means you give your future a chance to grow without being touched. Not because you're trying to surprise anyone, but because you're trying to succeed. Because you know how you are. You know what gets in your head. You know what drains your energy. You know what makes you start performing instead of building. So you make it clean. You don't announce the new routine while it's still fragile. You don't share the plan while you're still learning to execute it. You don't debate your boundaries while you're still practicing them. You don't talk your way into confidence. You earn it quietly by doing the thing again and again until it becomes normal. And this is where self-trust starts to return. Not the fake confidence that comes from excitement, but the stable kind that comes from evidence. You keep a promise to yourself alone, then you keep another one. Nobody knows, nobody claps, but you do, and your nervous system starts to relax, because for once your identity isn't built on what you say, it's built on what you repeat. That's the deeper reason your unfinished self needs protection. You're not just building a result, you're building a relationship with yourself, and relationships don't grow well under constant public observation. They grow through consistency, privacy, and trust. So if you're in a quiet season, don't rush to make it visible. Don't rush to make it real to others. Let it become real to you first. Let it become rooted. Let it become stable. Because once it's stable, it won't need protection anymore. It will stand on its own. Not every goal survives public attention. You turn that contract into a public. You turn that contract into a public announcement. You introduce forces that don't care about your future. Opinions, expectations, comparisons, ego, and the subtle pressure to perform the identity before you've built the habits that make it real. It's strange, but saying a goal out loud can sometimes feel like progress. You tell a friend you're getting in shape. You hint that you're starting a business. You post that you're locked in. People react. They support. They joke. They ask questions. They watch. And your brain for a second feels rewarded, almost like the change already happened. You get a hit of social dopamine. You feel seen. You feel like the new version of you has already arrived. But the work hasn't started yet. Not in the only place that matters, the repetition. That's why public attention can be a quiet killer. It gives you an early reward, and early rewards are dangerous because they reduce hunger. They make you feel like you're already becoming the person before you've earned that identity in private. Then real life shows up the next morning. You wake up tired. You don't feel inspired. The plan feels heavy. The excitement is gone. And now there's another weight on top of the work, the awareness that people know, that they might ask, that they might notice if you fall off, that you might look inconsistent. So instead of simply returning to the routine like a normal human being, you start managing an image. You start negotiating with embarrassment. You start trying to keep up the story you told, and the story becomes more important than the process. Even encouragement can become pressure. Someone says, "You've got this," and suddenly you feel like you have to prove you've got it. Someone checks in, and your mind goes to performance. You want to report progress, not reality. You feel tempted to exaggerate or to avoid the conversation entirely because you don't want to look like you're failing. And that's how a simple goal turns into a social stressor. But there's a deeper issue hiding under all of this. Public attention invites other people into a process they can't feel from the inside. They don't know your resistance. They don't know your fatigue. They don't know the private battles you're fighting just to show up. They only see outcomes, and their reactions will always be based on the surface. That means your motivation becomes unstable. One person's praise can inflate you. One person's doubt can deflate you. One person's sarcasm can make you want to prove yourself. One person's silence can make you wonder if you're still worth watching. And you end up doing the worst trade possible. You trade calm consistency for emotional noise. Stoicism has a simple way of cutting through this. It doesn't ask you to hate people or distrust everyone. It asks you to protect what is in your control. Your effort is in your control. Your choices are in your control. Your discipline is in your control. Other people's reactions are not. So if you tie your goal to their reactions, you've placed something sacred on unstable ground. There's a line often attributed to Epictetus that captures the spirit perfectly. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. The point isn't to be mysterious. The point is to keep the work pure, to let the goals stay connected to your standards, not to the room's response. Weeks where you show up badly, and still weeks where you show up badly, and still show up. They need quiet, so you can build without self-consciousness, without the temptation to look like you're progressing instead of actually progressing. And maybe that's the real test. Can you keep going when nobody knows? Can you train when nobody praises you? Can you build when nobody asks? Can you stay loyal to the future you want, even if it stays invisible for a while? The irony is that the goals that survive private seasons tend to explode later in the most satisfying way, not because you announced them, but because they matured. They became real, they gained weight, they earned structure. And when something is real, it doesn't need you to convince anyone. It introduces itself. So be careful what you expose too early, not because people are evil, but because attention changes the atmosphere around your work. And some ambitions need clean air. If you stop talking about your next move for a while, what goal would finally have the space to survive? Private discipline is stronger than public motivation. Motivation is loud. It announces itself. It wants a clean start date, a perfect mood, a playlist that hits, a moment that feels symbolic. Motivation loves the idea of being the kind of person who changes, and it usually comes with a story you can tell about yourself. That's why it feels so good in the beginning. You don't even need results yet. You just need the feeling that you're on your way. But discipline doesn't feel like that. Again, in ordinary time, when nobody is again, in ordinary time, when nobody is watching, when the work looks boring, when the results are still invisible, when your mind is trying to convince you that tomorrow will be easier. And that's why discipline wins, because motivation is tied to emotion, and emotion changes. You can wake up motivated on Monday and empty on Tuesday. You can feel unstoppable in the morning and heavy by night. You can watch one video and feel ready to conquer life, then get one stressful message and forget everything you promised yourself. Motivation is fragile because it depends on internal weather. Discipline is stronger because it's built like a contract. You do the thing not because you feel like it, but because you decided. And the moment you cross that line, where action is no longer waiting for mood, you stop being a person who tries. You become a person who moves. That's a different identity. And it matters because most people don't actually fail due to lack of knowledge. They fail because their behavior is powered by feeling. When the feeling isn't there, the habit collapses. So they spend their life chasing the feeling again. Another burst of inspiration, another speech, another plan, another this time for real. It becomes a loop, hype, crash, guilt, restart. Private discipline breaks the loop because it replaces hype with repetition. You see it in every domain that produces real results. The person who's in shape isn't motivated every day. They're trained. Their body knows the routine. Their mind knows the standard. They don't need a dramatic emotional push to go train, because training is no longer a debate. It's just what happens. The same is true for work. The creator who produces consistently isn't always inspired. They're organized. They built a structure strong enough to function even when emotion is low. This is why private discipline is more powerful than public motivation. It doesn't need witnesses. Public motivation tends to drift toward performance. You start to like the image of being disciplined. You start to enjoy the identity. People reflect back to you, and without meaning to, you begin to work for the reaction. You post the grind. You hint at the comeback. You let the goal become part of how people see you. Then the pressure builds, and the work becomes complicated. Because now you're not only lifting the weight of the habit, you're also lifting the weight of perception. Private discipline stays clean. Nobody claps, so you can't confuse applause with progress. Nobody knows, so you can't hide behind talk. Nobody's watching, so you're forced to answer the only honest question. Do you want the result, or do you want the appearance of ambition? That question hurts. And it also frees you. Because when nobody is watching, excuses stop working. You can't blame someone else's opinion. You can't blame misunderstanding. You can't blame the room. You're alone with your standard. And in that solitude, you build something attention can never give you: self-trust. Self-trust is the quiet confidence that comes from evidence. It comes from doing what you said you'd do, especially when you didn't feel like it. It comes from showing yourself that your word means something, not to the world, to you. Marcus Aurelius captured this spirit with a simple reminder: you have power over your mind, not outside events. It's not a quote about denial. It's a quote about ownership. Your routine is where ownership becomes real. Not in what you promise, not in what you post, in what you repeat. And once discipline becomes your core, you stop needing motivational spikes to survive. You don't need a perfect week to feel confident. You don't need approval to feel stable. You stop being a person who is constantly starting, and you become a person who is continuing. That's the real flex, continuing. So if you've been waiting for motivation, consider this. Motivation is a visitor. Discipline is a home. One shows up when it wants. The other is built by you, quietly, brick by brick, until it's strong enough to hold you on the days you don't feel strong. And here's the question I want you to sit with. If nobody could ever see your effort, not online, not in your circle, not even in your future story, would you still do the work tomorrow? The new you must be practiced in secret before it appears in public. Because identity isn't something you announce. It's something your nervous system learns. And your nervous system doesn't learn from speeches. It learns from repetition. Quiet repetition. The kind that happens when there's no audience to impress and no reputation to protect. Most people try to change publicly first. They change their language. They change their captions. They change the way they talk about themselves. They start using the vocabulary of discipline, the vocabulary of growth, the vocabulary of control. And for a moment it feels real, because words can create a temporary identity, like a costume you put on and start believing in. But the problem with public identity is that it's too easy to borrow it before you earn it. You can call yourself focused while your habits stay scattered. You can say you're building while your days are still leaking into distractions. You can claim you're unbothered while your mood is still being pulled around by somebody's attention. That gap, the gap between the identity you present and the identity your actions support, creates pressure. And pressure tends to expose what's not trained yet. That's why the real move is private rehearsal. The new you needs practice the same way a new skill needs practice. Nobody becomes calm in public without first learning calm in private. Nobody becomes disciplined in public without first learning to show up alone. Nobody becomes emotionally independent in public without first surviving the quiet moments where they used to chase, explain, and beg for reassurance. Think about how most transformations actually happen. The person who finally becomes consistent with fitness doesn't wake up one day with a new personality. They start doing small workouts when no one is watching. They build tolerance for discomfort. They learn how to move on low motivation days. Their body starts trusting the routine. Their mind stops negotiating. Over time, the identity becomes natural, not because they declared it, but because they rehearsed it until it felt normal. The same is true for boundaries. In the beginning, boundaries feel awkward. You say no, and you immediately want to soften it, explain it, apologize for it, make sure the other person isn't upset. That reflex isn't a moral weakness. It's a habit. And habits don't break through insight alone. They break through practice. So you practice privately first. You rehearse the sentence. You sit with the discomfort. You let someone be disappointed without rushing to fix it. You do it again, then again. Eventually, the boundary stops feeling like a confrontation and starts feeling like your baseline. This is what people miss when they say, "I'm changing." They think change is a declaration. It isn't. Change is training. Epictetus said it with blunt simplicity. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. The second half of that sentence is where most lives are won or lost. Do what you have to do doesn't happen on a stage. It happens in the unglamorous hours. It happens when you're tired, when you're alone, when no one's checking in, when the old you feels easier. Wants proof that the struggle is worth it. It wants recognition. It wants proof that the struggle is worth it. And public attention gives that reward too early. It makes you feel accomplished before you're stable. Then, the first hard day shows up, and the identity you announced doesn't have legs yet. So it collapses, and you feel embarrassed, and you quit, not because you can't do it, but because you exposed it before it could stand. In private, you're allowed to be clumsy. You're allowed to be inconsistent at first. You're allowed to miss a day and come back without turning it into a shame story. You're allowed to practice the new self, the way you practice a language, slowly, imperfectly, repeatedly, until it becomes yours. And there's a deeper benefit that doesn't get talked about enough. Private practice makes your confidence clean. It's not borrowed from how people see you. It's earned from what you've done. That kind of confidence feels different. It's quieter. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't panic when misunderstood. It doesn't crumble when the room is cold because it wasn't built in the room. So if you're serious about becoming someone new, let that new version of you be small for a while. Let it be hidden. Let it be protected. Let it be rehearsed in silence. Give it time to become natural, not performative. Then let the public meet it later, when it's already real. Because the cleanest transformation is the one you don't have to explain. And here's the question that sharpens this point. If nobody could ever applaud your progress, what part of the new you would you still practice tonight, in private, just to keep your word to yourself? Stop broadcasting what should still be growing roots. Because there's a phase where a goal is alive, but it's not strong yet. It's like the first weeks of a new routine, when it feels promising, when you can finally imagine a different life, but one bad day can still knock it over. And in that phase, visibility isn't strength. Visibility is pressure. Needs depth, not attention. It needs depth, not attention. It needs repetition, not commentary. It needs a protected environment where the work can stay simple. The moment you start broadcasting, the environment changes. Now there's a mental audience following your progress. Now there's a part of you that wants to be consistent for appearance, not for identity. Now you're tempted to post the grind on the days you feel strong and disappear on the days you feel weak, which turns growth into a performance instead of a practice. And when growth becomes a performance, it becomes unstable, because performance depends on mood, on energy, on reactions. Practice depends on standard. Even if people support you, their attention adds weight. They ask questions you don't know how to answer yet. They offer advice you didn't request. They project their own fears onto your plan. They joke. They compare. They doubt. They praise. And all of it pulls your attention outward, away from the quiet work that actually builds the roots. You want someone to witness your decision. You want someone to witness your decision. But there's a difference between accountability and exposure. Accountability is a private agreement with someone you trust, someone who protects your process and keeps you grounded. Exposure is turning your unfinished work into public content, where anyone can touch it with an opinion. And opinions, even small ones, can poison early growth. Not because you're fragile as a person, but because the habit is still fragile. The identity is still new. You're still learning how to show up without arguing with yourself. You're still learning how to handle a hard day without letting it become a story. So when you invite noise too early, the noise doesn't just distract you, it shakes your commitment. It makes you overthink. It makes you second-guess. It makes you explain. It makes you justify. It makes you care about being right instead of being consistent. This is why some goals die the moment they're announced. The goal itself wasn't weak. The roots were just shallow because they hadn't had time. Stoicism respects this kind of quiet building. It doesn't mean you never share anything. It means you understand timing. The Stoics weren't obsessed with being seen as disciplined. They were obsessed with actually being disciplined. And the work that makes you disciplined rarely looks exciting in the beginning. It looks like boring repetition. It looks like saying no and sitting with discomfort. It looks like showing up when you'd rather disappear. It looks like doing the smallest version of the habit on the worst day, just to keep the identity alive. That kind of work grows roots. And roots change you before results do. They change the way you wake up, the way you choose food, the way you handle emotion, the way you speak to yourself, the way you spend your time when nobody is watching. The world can't clap for that because it can't see it. But that's exactly why it's powerful. It's pure. It's not contaminated by performance. So if you're building something serious, protect it from the urge to narrate it. Let your progress be quiet for a while. Let the work become stable. Let the routine become normal. Let the new standard become your default. Then, when it finally shows up publicly, it won't need you to convince anyone. It'll feel obvious. Because roots don't need applause. They need time. And time needs silence. Talking about the move is often the first way people kill the move. Not always on purpose. Not always with malice. Sometimes it's a joke, a skeptical look, a be realistic, a well-meant warning. Sometimes it's the opposite. Too much praise too early, too much attention, too many questions, too many expectations wrapped around something that was supposed to stay simple. Either way, the result is the same. The moment your plan becomes a conversation, it stops being clean. A move is powerful when it's still yours, when it lives in that private space where you don't have to defend it, sell it, or explain it. The moment you start talking about it, you introduce an extra layer that has nothing to do with execution. Now there's perception. Now there's identity. Now there's a version of you that wants to sound confident, a version that wants to seem certain, a version that wants to look disciplined before discipline is stable. And that's where things quietly break. Because the truth is, most people don't respond to your future. They respond to their own interpretation of it. Their reaction isn't about your dream. It's about what your dream triggers in them. It might trigger doubt because they tried something similar and failed. It might trigger discomfort because your growth forces them to feel their stagnation. It might trigger jealousy because your movement makes them feel left behind. Or it might trigger excitement because they want to attach themselves to your momentum for a moment. None of that is your responsibility, but once you let the move become public, you start carrying all of it anyway. You can feel it happen in real time. You share the plan, and suddenly you're answering questions you didn't need to answer. You're explaining why it matters. You're justifying why now. You're trying to sound prepared so you don't look naive. You start editing your vision to make it more acceptable. You soften it so it won't threaten anyone. Or you inflate it so it sounds impressive. Either way, you're no longer building. You're managing a narrative. And narratives are heavy. They pull you out of the work and into the performance of the work. Even when someone is supportive, the conversation can still weaken the move. Their encouragement feels good, so your brain takes the reward early. You feel like you've already made progress because people see you as someone who's about to change. That feeling is addictive. It makes the next step, actually doing the boring work, feel less urgent. The hunger gets replaced by comfort. Then the first hard day comes, and the comfort is gone. Now you're left with the work and the pressure. And pressure is a strange thing. It doesn't always push you forward. Sometimes it freezes you. It makes you avoid the work, because failing publicly feels worse than failing privately. So you delay, you stall, you plan more. You wait until you're sure you can look consistent. That's how talking kills the move. It makes you afraid of being seen struggling. But struggle is the only path to results. This is why Stoicism, at its core, is not a philosophy of looking strong. It's a philosophy of being strong without needing witnesses. Marcus Aurelius wrote for himself, not for applause. He didn't need the world to validate his discipline in order to practice it. There's a line from Epictetus that cuts right through this temptation. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In other words, don't turn your next step into a speech. Let your behavior speak in a language that doesn't require interpretation. Because the world is noisy, and noise changes your intention. When you keep your move quiet, you keep it close to the real reason you're doing it. You can be honest about the fear without advertising the fear. You can be imperfect without turning imperfection into humiliation. You can move in small steps without feeling like you owe anyone dramatic proof. You can adjust the plan without feeling like you failed, because nobody is keeping score except you. And that's where the move stays alive. Inside your routine, not inside a conversation. So if you're serious, treat your next move like something valuable, the way you'd treat cash in your pocket. You don't pull it out and count it in public. You don't show it to people who don't need to see it. You keep it close until it becomes something that can't be taken from you by a reaction, a doubt, a laugh, or an opinion. That's what it means to build in private. Not secrecy for ego. Privacy for survival. Because once the move becomes real, once it has roots, repetition, structure, you won't need to talk about it anyway. People will notice the difference without you narrating it. The cleanest transformations don't come with announcements. They come with presence. So ask yourself this, honestly, what are you still talking about that you should be doing quietly? And what would happen if, for the next month, you stopped explaining and simply built? Your private routine is your real biography. Not the story you tell about yourself, not your intentions, not the version of you that shows up when people are watching. Your biography, the honest one, is written in the quiet parts of your day. The first 10 minutes after you wake up, the way you handle boredom, the way you respond to discomfort, the choices you make when no one will ever applaud them, because words are cheap. Even your own words to yourself can be cheap. You can promise 100 times. You can swear you're about to change. You can think deeply about your future and still live the exact same day on repeat. The only thing that breaks that loop is routine. Not as a rigid schedule, but as a pattern of self-respect that shows up whether you feel inspired or not. A lot of people live with a split identity. There's who they believe they are, and there's what their daily behavior proves. That gap creates tension. It's the tension that makes you feel guilty at night and restless in the morning. It's the tension that makes you reach for distractions, because distractions numb the discomfort of inconsistency. And if you don't close that gap, you end up living in a permanent state of almost disciplined, almost focused, almost healed, almost confident, always almost. Private routine closes the gap because it doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be consistent. That's why routine is your real biography. It tells the truth about what you worship. If you reach for your phone before you reach for your mind, it tells the truth. If you make time for everyone else but never for your body, it tells the truth. If you talk about growth but avoid the boring work that creates growth, it tells the truth. Your day is a confession, even when your mouth is silent. And this can feel harsh until you see how freeing it is. Because if your biography is written by routine, then you can rewrite your life without needing permission. You don't need a dramatic breakthrough. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to explain your new standards. You just need to change what you repeat. Most people chase identity through mood. They wait until they feel like the new person. They wait for confidence to arrive. They wait for motivation to hit. But mood is unreliable. It comes and goes like weather. Routine is what makes identity stable. It's what turns I want to be into I am, not through declaration, but through evidence. And the evidence becomes personal. It changes the way you trust yourself. When you keep a promise privately, when nobody knows you resisted the urge to scroll, nobody knows you trained even though you didn't feel like it. Nobody knows you did the work instead of talking about the work. Something inside you strengthens. It's not loud confidence. It's quieter than that. It's the feeling that your word means something, that you're not just a person who imagines a better life. You're a person who builds it, piece by piece. This is also why private routines feel boring to people who live for attention. Boring is the point. Boring means it's sustainable. Boring means it's not a performance. Boring means you're not depending on emotional fireworks to do what needs to be done. The strongest people usually aren't the most dramatic. They're the most consistent. They've trained themselves to do the right thing on ordinary days, which is why they can handle extraordinary days without falling apart. Seneca put it in a sentence that stings a little because it's true. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The imagination loves grand plans and future versions. Routine deals with reality. Routine deals with the sink full of dishes, the tired body, the distracted mind, the temptation to delay, the urge to reach for comfort. It's easy to be impressive in imagination. It's harder and more meaningful to be consistent in reality. And here's the key. Your routine doesn't have to be huge. A private biography isn't written with dramatic chapters, it's written with daily lines. A short walk when you don't want to move. A clean hour of focused work. A simple meal that respects your body. A decision to go to sleep instead of chasing one more hit of stimulation. A boundary you keep without announcing it. Small enough to repeat, serious enough to change you. Over time, those lines become a story, and the story becomes a life. That's why building in private isn't just about hiding goals. It's about aligning your life so tightly with your standards that you stop needing to convince anyone you're changing. Your routine becomes the proof. Your calm becomes the proof. Your discipline becomes the proof. The way you move through the day becomes the proof. So if you want a brutal, honest mirror, don't ask yourself who you are. Look at what you repeat when nobody is watching. That's your biography right now. And the best part is, you can start rewriting it today, quietly, without announcing anything, just by changing what happens next. Hidden discipline builds a kind of self-trust that attention cannot give. There's a specific confidence that doesn't come from being liked, and it doesn't come from being praised, and it doesn't even come from feeling ready. It comes from a quieter source, evidence you've collected in private, the kind of evidence nobody can take from you because nobody even knows it exists. Most people are trying to feel confident by changing the outside world. They want reassurance. They want someone to say, "I believe in you." They want recognition, a signal, a reaction that calms their doubt. And yes, encouragement can help. But it doesn't build the deepest kind of stability because it's borrowed. It depends on someone else staying consistent, staying supportive, staying present. The moment that support fades, the confidence fades with it. Self-trust is different. Self-trust is not an emotion, it's a relationship. And relationships are built through repetition, through reliability, through moments where you show up exactly when it would have been easy to disappear. That's why hidden discipline matters so much. When nobody is watching, there's no social reward, no applause, no reputation boost, no external pressure to keep it up. All you have is you, and that's where the real question shows up. Clean and uncomfortable. Do you do the work when it only benefits your future? When you say you're going to do something and you do it privately, you're teaching your nervous system a new rule. My word means something, not to the world, to me. And that sounds simple until you realize how many people don't trust themselves. They've promised themselves so many times and broken it so many times that their mind treats their own intentions like a joke. They say, "I'm going to change." And a deeper part of them responds, "Sure, like last time." That inner cynicism is brutal because it makes everything harder. It makes motivation feel fake. It makes goals feel embarrassing. It makes the future feel like a story you tell yourself to cope, not a reality you can build. Hidden discipline repairs that relationship the same way you repair trust with another person, with small, consistent proof, not a huge transformation overnight, not a dramatic comeback that burns out, just quiet follow-through. You wake up and do the first part of the routine, even if it's imperfect. You keep a boundary, even if you feel guilty. You do the work, even if you feel uninspired. You don't reach for the old distraction, even when the urge is loud. You don't announce it. You don't turn it into a personality. You simply do it, then do it again. Over time, your mind stops arguing with your intentions because it has been trained by evidence. It starts to believe you. And that's where the real freedom begins, because once you trust yourself, you stop needing the world to constantly confirm you. You don't spiral when someone doesn't reply. You don't collapse when you're misunderstood. You don't chase reassurance the same way. Your inner stability becomes less dependent on external warmth because you have something stronger underneath it: reliability. This is one of the most Stoic ideas you can live, even if you never mention Stoicism. The Stoics weren't obsessed with being admired for discipline. They were obsessed with being governed from the inside. They wanted a life where the self isn't dragged around by impulses, by attention, by mood, by praise, by rejection. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself as if he was training a soldier inside his own mind, not for a parade, but for the private battle of staying steady. That's what you're doing when you practice hidden discipline. You're training the part of you that stays loyal when nobody is watching. And what's interesting is how this changes your relationship with attention itself. Attention stops being a need. It becomes optional. You can enjoy it without being addicted to it. You can receive praise without depending on it. You can be seen without needing to be seen. Because you've already built the core proof in silence. That proof also makes you harder to manipulate. People can't pull you around as easily with mixed signals because your center isn't up for negotiation. You stop treating approval like oxygen. You stop living like you need permission to feel okay. You become steadier in your decisions, not because life got easier, but because you became more reliable to yourself. And there's a quiet dignity in that. The dignity of being able to look in the mirror and know you're not just a person with good intentions. You're a person who follows through. That dignity changes the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you handle pressure. It makes you calmer, less needy, more selective, more patient. You stop rushing to prove yourself because you already know who you are becoming. So if you've been craving confidence, don't chase it in public, build it in private. Give yourself the only kind of reassurance that lasts: evidence. Because attention can make you feel good for a moment. Self-trust can hold you for a lifetime. A quiet season is not stagnation. It is controlled preparation. From the outside, it can look like nothing is happening. Less talking, less posting, less explaining, less showing your face. People might assume you fell off, lost motivation, got distracted, got lazy, disappeared. And if you're not careful, you can start believing their interpretation, because the human ego hates being unseen. It hates feeling like you're not moving. But a quiet season is often the most serious kind of movement, because it's movement without noise. It's the season where you stop chasing the dopamine of being acknowledged and start building the boring structure that actually changes your life. The season where you stop trying to look productive and start becoming consistent. The season where your progress isn't measured by reactions, but by repetitions. Controlled preparation means you're not rushing to be validated. You're not trying to be impressive while you're still unstable. You're not asking the world to clap for something that isn't finished. You're setting a pace you can survive. You're practicing the new identity until it becomes normal. And that takes time. People are noticing. But the deepest parts of transformation are invisible at first. They show up as internal shifts that don't look like much from the outside. You're sleeping earlier. You're cutting off distractions. You're training in silence. You're saving money. You're reading. You're regulating your mood. You're building a standard inside your day. Those things don't get applause. They don't go viral. But they're the foundation of everything that eventually becomes visible. This is why quiet seasons feel uncomfortable. They remove external feedback. They remove the quick reassurance that you're on track. They force you to build with faith and evidence instead of excitement. You don't get to borrow confidence from attention. You have to earn it through routine, and that earns something stronger than motivation: patience. Patience isn't passive. Patience is the ability to keep working while the results are still hidden. It's the ability to tolerate the "nothing is happening" feeling without quitting. It's the ability to keep repeating the right actions while your mind is screaming for proof. That's controlled preparation. You're not waiting. You're training your nervous system to handle delayed gratification, to stay loyal to the process without needing constant confirmation. Stoicism respects this deeply because it understands that most of life is not under your control. You don't control timing. You don't control other people's recognition. You don't control how fast the world responds. What you control is your own standard, your own effort, your own practice. A quiet season is where you stop arguing with reality and start aligning with what actually works.